Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Is a Used Electric Car Right for You? I will be your presenter today. My name is Devin DeLibero. I am the Electric Vehicle Program Coordinator on the Drive Green team at Green Energy Consumers Alliance. And with me today is my coworker who I will allow to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Ezra Messenger, and I'm the EV Program Associate at Green Energy Consumers Alliance.
So Ezra will be the handy person in the Q&A who will be answering your questions as we go throughout this presentation. That's not to say that there won't be different parts of the presentation where I'll stop for questions, because I definitely will be doing that. But then I just want to go over some webinar logistics. And now, Ezra, if you want to take yourself off camera, you are more than welcome to do so. So we'll see you in the Q&A. So just so everyone knows, obviously you are all muted and not on camera, so this is to avoid background noise. But again, like I said, we will have regular breaks for questions. Please put them in the questions box. Ezra will answer them, and I will answer some aloud as time allows. This webinar is being recorded, so I will share not only the recording after this presentation, but I will also share the slides. So that goes for anybody who registered for this event. So a little bit more about us before we start the presentation itself. So Green Energy Consumers is a nonprofit that has been around since 1982 under various different names in both Rhode Island and Massachusetts, though they only came together as one organization in the 2000s. Our mission at Green Energy Consumers is to harness our power as energy consumers to speed the transition to a zero carbon future. And we do this through both our programmatic and advocacy work. So the program that we work on, Ezra and I, is Drive Green, where we educate folks about electric vehicles, their benefits, and then also provide a platform through which you can then go and purchase an electric vehicle with participating dealerships through our EV shopping tool, which we might touch on at the end of this presentation. So that's enough about us. Just want to say what we'll cover in this webinar. So in this webinar, we will talk a little bit about the state of the market, the benefits of buying a pre-owned or used electric vehicle. We'll talk about battery health and warranties. We'll talk about popular electric cars to buy pre-owned, and then we'll conclude with our pre-owned shopping tool, and I'll go over that. So to start off, we'll talk about inventory and the state of the market. So what you should know is that prices for used EVs are going down. In the pandemic, prices for used EVs and used cars in general went sky high because of the supply chain issues with the new vehicle market, which meant that there's a lot of demand for the used market with not enough supply. So now that that's evened out a little bit, prices for used EVs are going down, which is really great and exciting news for all of us here. With that being said, there are not as many used EVs on the market as we would like, and that's simply because the new EV market share isn't as great of a number as we would like percentage-wise compared to gas-powered cars. So once there are more new EVs on the market, once those cars come off lease or once they're being sold secondhand, we will see more used EVs coming down the line, and I would think that would be in the next year or two, so just stay tuned. The used EV market will also grow with legislation like Advanced Clean Cars 2. So that is something that came out of the Zero Emission Vehicle Coalition led by California. And basically, Advanced Clean Cars 2 builds on Advanced Clean Cars 1 standards, which require that 100% of passenger vehicles sold be zero-emission vehicles by 2035, and with interim year targets requiring increasing percentages of zero-emission vehicles. And Advanced Clean Cars 2 also requires stronger emission standards for combustion engine vehicles or gas-powered cars until 2035. So basically what all of that means is that California has signed into legislation that they will stop selling gas-powered cars by 2035. Massachusetts has followed suit, and Rhode Island has also followed suit, but this won't come into effect like as law until I believe it's January of 2024. So you will see that by 2035, at least in our two states that we operate in, there will be no more new EV sold, which means there's going to be a lot more new EV models in the near future, which will then turn into used EV models. So you'll definitely see the market grow. And now, this is one of our former colleagues who bought her very own used EV. She bought a Chevy Bolt, so Volt with a V as in Victor, and we're going to talk about why you should buy a pre-owned car. So the first is the federal tax credit that has now included used cars, which it previously did not. So as of last year, it is starting to include used cars. So here is a list of all the manufacturers and models that qualify for this used car tax credit. If you know a little bit about the tax credit for new cars, you'll know that there are a lot of battery requirements. Those do not apply for used vehicles. So that is a benefit for buying a used vehicle and getting this tax credit. It is a little bit less than the new tax credit, so it's $4,000 or 30% of the purchase price, whichever is lower. You have to buy the vehicle from a dealership, and the car has to be 2 years old at least and cost $25,000 or less. So you might be able to do this if it comes off lease. Also, if there's anyone on the line right now who has a new EV that they're leasing, when it comes off lease, if you decide you want to buy it, you could apply this used tax credit to the purchase of that now used vehicle. So that's just something to consider. However, the used tax credit only applies to first resale. So that means the tax credit follows the car and not the person. So if the used tax credit was already applied to a car that you're interested in once, you cannot get it for that same car again, and you might want to consider looking at a different car if that's, you know, a main consideration in buying that car. There is a lower income threshold compared to new EVs that qualify for the used tax credit. So for joint filers, you have to make $150,000 or less. And for individual filers, you have to make $75,000 or less. Now we have really great state rebates. At least in Rhode Island, we have something called Drive EV, which will give you $1,000 for a used all-electric vehicle and $750 for a used plug-in hybrid vehicle. There are additional amounts available if you qualify for the Drive EV Plus program, which is based on your income. So it's really for low to moderate income folks. Some requirements for that is $40,000 is the absolute max you can purchase this car for. And once you get it, you can have to apply for the state rebate within 120 days, and you can purchase it from Rhode Island dealerships or select Massachusetts dealerships. And if you still can't find it in those dealerships and you can find it in another dealership in Mass, you can contact the Office of Energy Resources and ask if you can get an exemption for your car because you can't find it anywhere else and you got it at this dealership in Massachusetts. So just something to know. In Massachusetts, the rebate is called More EV, and it is in the works to get a used EV state rebate, but it hasn't actually been made a thing yet. So we're still waiting for that to be live. So we expect that to come maybe a little bit late this summer or early in the fall. So stay tuned for that. Now, when buying an EV in general or a car in general, there are emissions that come with manufacturing. So if you're buying a used EV or a used car, that's great because you're not creating that initial emissions process to create the car. And buying an electric vehicle or electric truck electric car, whatever it may be. The emissions process when you first create these vehicles is a little bit more intensive than with a gas-powered car because you have that battery manufacturing component to consider. So that's when you're buying used, that's really great because you don't have to consider that because they're already on the market. So you're really not adding to the emissions. And over the life cycle of these cars and these trucks, the electric versions actually have far fewer emissions than their gas-powered counterparts. So there is actually a break-even point that EVs need to drive to match the initial emissions, what we're going to call debt, compared to the gas-powered cars. So you'll reach that in about a year or two of driving. So if you're buying pre-owned, it's really not an issue, but just to give you some perspective, the break-even point for an electric car, you have to drive 21,300 miles, and the break-even point for an electric truck is 17,500 miles. So this will vary a little bit by because of regional electricity prices and emissions, but really that's just generally you will save in emissions over the life cycle of these vehicles. So just something to know. Now we're going to compare some different models, new versus used, that sort of thing, just to put this in even more perspective for you and show you what the price differences are. So we've used a popular gas-powered car for just like a control, and then we have two popular electric vehicle models. So these are all 2020 model years. The things that you want to look at here are how much it costs to fuel and how much it costs to buy. So when you compare a Honda Civic to a Nissan Leaf and a Chevy Bolt, you'll find that it costs a lot less to fuel. So the Honda Civic is around $1,600 to fuel per year, whereas the Nissan Leaf Plus is $657, and the Chevy Bolt is even better at $602. Then you go to the purchase price. For the Honda Civic, it's about, let's say, 1,000, 1,100 more to buy. So the main savings you're seeing is in like the fuel savings for this particular model year right here. But that doesn't factor in like maintenance and things like that, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So just off the bat, you'll see there are a lot of savings to be had when you're considering an electric vehicle compared to a gas-powered car. And also just to note, the range for these two vehicles are, for the Leaf Plus, it's 226 miles, and the Chevy Bolt, it is about 259 miles. And then we're not considering with these price points the federal tax credit, which I just talked about, or any of the state incentives. So that price can be brought down quite a bit when you're making your decisions. Now, if we want to compare that to a new car, again, it shows the same models and just the newest model year. So they all cost, actually the EVs cost even a little bit less to fuel than the 2020 models because they're just a little bit more efficient. But the Honda Civic costs approximately $1,500 to fuel per year compared to the Nissan Leaf, which is $639, and the Chevy Bolt, which is $590. So good savings there. Now, when you compare the Civic to the Civic, the 2020 model was $17,259 versus the most current year model is $23,750. So you still, I mean, if you get a car like that, you're saving even with a gas car. You move to the Nissan Leaf Plus. It was used $16,137. New is $36,190. So you're saving about $20,000 for like basically the same car. The Chevy Bolt used, the 2020 version, is $16,114, and the brand new one is $26,500. So you're roughly saving about $10,000. And in particular with the Bolt, it is a special case in that they are very backed up with their orders right now. So you might not even get a Bolt because they're stopping production for the time being in November. So you might not get an order filled even if you were to try to get a brand new Bolt. And again, some of these new cars do have incentives. So there's a federal tax credit for the Bolt available. I don't think that it is for the Nissan Leaf because there's battery requirements. So that is also a factor in your decision making. There are state rebates announced for both states, Rhode Island and Massachusetts, but I don't know if that's enough to make much of a difference when you consider the savings for buying a pre-owned car. And all these prices that I've got for the used cars are from Kelley Blue Book. So if you want to check that out, please feel free to do so. And next, I want to talk about the overall savings, the lifetime savings of these cars. So when you're thinking about electric, some of the key savings that you'll see are with fuel, which we just kind of talked about a little bit, and with maintenance. So I'm going to briefly talk about fuel, but mostly focus on maintenance for this slide. So this information comes from a consumer report that is linked at the bottom of the slide, which I encourage you to take a peek at. But it found that over the lifetime of the vehicle, AV owners save about $4,500 in maintenance costs. And so you can see with this graph on the left-hand side that you can note that in just about any part of the lifetime that they've shown us here. So in the first 50,000 miles for a battery electric vehicle, your maintenance cost can be as little as $577 compared to a gas car. That's $1,400. It's a huge difference. Now, when you move to 100,000 miles, you'll still see that the gas car is far outstripping the battery electric vehicle and the plug-in hybrid as far as maintenance costs are concerned. And then when you go to the lifetime 200,000 mile range, it goes up. It's like half of what the gas car costs to maintain. So part of the reason why maintenance costs are so low for EVs is that there's far fewer moving parts. So there's far fewer things to service and maintain. Like, I feel like the biggest one to think about is like, you don't need to get an oil change. Like, you don't need to do things like that. And there's a lot of other things that I'm not a mechanic, so I don't remember all the different things that you don't have to service. But suffice to say that there's just far fewer maintenance costs associated with owning an electric vehicle. You will still have some of those costs associated with the plug-in hybrids. That's the same as the gas because it still has a gas backup, but it's still less than a traditionally all gas car. And now onto fuel. So this same report found that EV owners save anywhere from $800 to about $1,000 per year in fuel costs, which is just fantastic, and something I will talk a little bit more in depth about in this next slide. So we have done some math with the main utility suppliers of electricity in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. So National Grid and Eversource in Massachusetts and Rhode Island Energy in Rhode Island. And we have found that it costs with National Grid and Eversource 9 cents to run your car on a mile of electricity, and 7 cents for Rhode Island Energy customers to run their cars on a mile of electricity, compared to a gas car, which would take 14 cents per mile. You're saving anywhere from 5 to 7 cents per mile in New England if you drive on electricity. And now this is even considering New England's historically very high electricity prices when compared to the rest of the country. So even here, you're saving on fuel costs compared to gas cars. And if you're like, where did you get these numbers? I want to double check this. We have all of this available on our fuel cost page, which you can definitely take a look at. And we compared this to price of gas in last month, which was $3.55. And so that's how we got the 14 cents. And then used EVs are just a great option for just about anybody in anybody's budget. So if you are retired or mostly driving around town, there is an EV for you. If you are a 2-car household, EVs are a really good choice, especially if you have a car that you feel more comfortable driving like long trips on gas versus an EV. At least you're doing most of your driving with an EV, you know? And then they're great for families with teenagers because you can teach them how to drive their first car and make that an electric car. And they'll start thinking about charging habits and start already getting in that mind frame. So for any future car purchase, they are ready to drive another electric car. They're also, like we just talked about, great for drivers looking for low cost of ownership and low maintenance costs. They're good for your daily commute, especially since, you know, you can charge overnight, whether you have just a regular outlet at your home or if you install the level 2 charging unit, you can just charge your car overnight and that should get you to where you need to go. And then if you are lucky to have a charging unit at your home, at your workplace, you can also charge at work. And you can charge on your errands. So if your grocery store or your coffee shop has a parking lot with a charging station, you can park there too. So you don't actually have to go to the gas station. It can be very convenient. And then they're also good for road trips. I know some folks are concerned about making a road trip in an electric car, but I have met so many people who have done that cross country from Massachusetts to as far as California. And we have some blogs about that even on our website. So they are doable. You can use apps like a Better Route Planner that help you gauge, you know, charging stops and things like that. So really, EVs and used EVs are great for anybody's lifestyle. You know, plus all the other reasons to go electric. So there are, if you have an all electric vehicle, there are no noxious tailpipe emissions, you know, all that particulate matter that goes out into the air from your tailpipe that leads to respiratory illnesses. There's none of that if you have an all electric vehicle. So that's great. They're quiet and a smooth ride. Sure, even Ezra can tell you after his first ride and drive event, they are very smooth, especially in the Hyundai models that I really like. And they're very quiet, so you don't have to worry about making much noise. In fact, manufacturers have had to install things that make noise on these cars, so pedestrians know when they're driving down the street. And like I touched upon in the last slide, charging can be really convenient. It's just about a different mindset. So you just have to stop thinking about a gas station and start thinking about like how you charge your phone and like things like that. It's kind of similar. It just becomes a part of your everyday routine and kind of on autopilot after a while. You won't have to think about it so much. I'm going to pause here. Ezra, do you want to come back and let me know if there's anything that we should answer? Any questions?
Sure. So there were 3 or 4 questions right now. One, I think you've already answered, but they wanted to know about the cost of fueling EVs and where that cost was coming from.
Okay.
Another question was about the production of the Chevy Bolt, which is currently ending, and the new iteration of the Bolt will be based on the Ultium technology. So I don't know if you want to cover that.
I will answer that to the best of my ability because it is kind of complicated. So in April of this year, GM announced that they were going to stop the production of the Chevy Bolt, much to the dismay of all Bolt owners. And it's kind of crazy because it's done the best out of all their GM's EV sales. I think it sold like 19,000 in its first quarter of last year. And so now they have announced, I think it was just earlier this month or late last month, that they're going to come back with the Bolt, but it's going to be only after Chevy has brought out the Silverado EV, the Blazer EV, and the Equinox EV. So once those are all in production, then they will circle back to the Bolt and reconfigure it a little bit for the Ultium platform. So it's going to have a different battery, which is going to be 40% less cost. So the cost will be even less of the Bolt. And it's just going to have like a new like software platform. So what that means for now, what that means right now is that if you want a brand new Bolt, you're in a little bit of a hard spot. Some dealers are not taking orders. Some dealers are. They're not going to guarantee that you're going to get one because they don't have a guarantee right now. Some dealers aren't taking orders because there is so much of a backlog. The last time to order one, like the last order session that Chevy is going to accept, starts at 8/17, so just in a week from now, and then we'll be open for about 2 to 3 weeks, and then they're going to shut down all orders, and they're going to produce cars until November when they shut down production until I don't know when it's coming back. I would guess sometime in 2024, 2025, not really sure. So if you want one, now is your time to do your best to try, but they cannot guarantee it.
There were two more questions. So one, John wanted to know about.
We're gonna get
um,
there.
Okay, and then one last question that I'm currently typing. I don't know if you want to address, but if there's any minivans or similar used EVs that are good for camping or outdoor activities.
Sure. So the Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid is a great minivan. I think it gets about 33 miles of electric range, and then it has a gas backup, so it's not all electric. I know people use the Mitsubishi Outlander, which is another plug-in hybrid. It only gets about 26 miles of range. So there's lots of plug-in hybrid examples that are really great like that. Hyundai and Kia also have, well, Hyundai especially has a couple of like SUV hybrids, plug-in hybrids as well, if you want to look into those. For all electric vehicles, it really just depends on the size of your family, like who's going, that sort of thing. We have a EV ambassador, which is what we call EV volunteers, who regularly goes on road trips with his wife across country and their 2 dogs and his Kia Niro EV. So you could get one of those. It's one of those crossovers, so it's not huge, but he does it yearly. So it's definitely doable. Teslas have something called camp mode. So you could do that and potentially like sleep in your car or camp in your car. I know some people do that and put like the tent extension over the trunk. So you could do something like that. It really just depends. Unfortunately, I don't know enough details about your situation. It depends on your situation and what you're looking for. But most cars you should be able to do that in. But if you want a bigger one, it'd probably be the plug-in hybrids. And then where should we be looking to find out about Massachusetts incentives for used EVs? So you'll look on the More EV website. And you can also, if you sign up for like our newsletters or like our blogs or whatever, we will definitely send out emails whenever we know like when that's going to come out. So stay tuned. Okay, I'm gonna continue on to battery health because I feel like we're already there a little bit. Okay. So, a common concern when drivers are considering switching over to an electric car is about the battery. So namely, how long will it last? How much does it cost to replace? That sort of thing. So before we answer those questions, here's a little bit of background information. We're all relatively familiar with lithium-ion batteries, which power our phones and laptops. The batteries in electric vehicles are the same technology on a much larger scale, about 10,000 times the storage capacity of a smartphone. The battery packed for an electric car lives not underneath the hood of the car where you would find a gas engine, but in the floor of the car. It's kind of like a skateboard and you stack the rest of the car on top of it. This is part of why electric cars have good handling. All the weight on the bottom of the car gives you the feeling of clinging to the road. And it also means like that you won't like roll over as easily as a regular car because all that weight is, low. There are a bunch of individual cells per pack, and you can see all the packs fit into the entire battery module on the right. However, batteries in electric cars are much more sophisticated than batteries in laptops or smartphones because they're used at a much higher duty, more power, and more storage. They use complex heating and cooling systems to keep them at the right temperature, and they're engineered to have as long a life as possible, which you can't really say for laptops and smartphones. So that's a little bit about batteries. And you can see all the different moving parts compared to in these two pictures. Just moving on to talk about different cars. So a major plus for electric cars, especially a pre-owned car, is how reliable they are. Still, every bit of technology has a lifespan, and batteries are no exception. Battery degradation is a natural process that reduces the amount of energy the battery can store over time. We measure battery condition according to state of health, or SOH. SOH starts at 100% and deteriorates over time, and it's a measure of how much energy the battery can store compared to itself when it was new. Overall, the data shows that EV batteries hold up over time, or according to data from over 6,000 vehicles, you can expect to lose about 10% of range over 6 years. That means if you're worried about having to replace the battery, don't be. The battery will outlast the life of the car. The graph here is an average of all sorts of vehicle models and years, though it is not exactly linear. It's about a 2.3% drop every year. You'll barely notice that as a driver. It'll just become kind of habit. And most importantly, it's not like you'll experience a sudden failure, which is what most people seem to be afraid of. It'll just be a gradual decrease in range, but it'll be very, very minimal. Oops. Excuse me. There are other factors that can contribute to battery decline: exposure to high temperatures, consistently charging using DC fast charging speeds, or charging to 100% and then draining back down to 0% every day. All can contribute to faster rates of decline, but engineers know this, and that's why they use good thermal management systems to keep the battery at the right temperature. It's also why they build a little excess capacity into the battery that's not usable, because it protects the capacity of the battery, and that's about like 10%. But what about the battery itself? The actual rate of degradation does depend on make, model, and year. So we're going to do like a little comparison of a Nissan Leaf. The Nissan Leaf, the 2017 version, has a slower rate of recline, which is a testament to improved battery technology. Also, 200 miles or more of range is the new norm, especially in this in this year span, like 2017. And batteries that have higher capacity fare better in the long term. So the 2016 version of the Nissan Leaf had about only, I think, 107 miles of range. So if you have a car that has more than that, you're going to be, using it less and bringing it down to 0, potentially less, or bringing it down to 20% less. So you're not charging it as much, and you're not, doing so much degradation to it. So using the entire capacity of the battery is more taxing than just using a small portion of it. That's why it's better to have a car with greater range. It is a lot easier to discharge the car from 100% to 0% if you only have 100 miles of range compared to 250 miles of range. So that's part of the reason why you see a rate of decline changing from year to year. You might use this tool for an older EV to predict how much actual driving capacity your car has. So for example, say you're looking at a 2016 Nissan Leaf. After 4 years of driving, let's say it loses about 10% of its battery capacity, which translates into about 11 miles of range. So your maximum range might be 96 miles instead of 107, which is when the car was new. Another thing you can take away from this is that buying a 2016 Nissan Leaf is a better idea than buying a 2014 Nissan Leaf, because that will have, it still has that lower range, but it's being used quite a bit more. So it will have a little bit more battery degradation. So just remember, this is all in comparison for the battery. The 2017 Nissan Leaf actually won an award for its dependability among all vehicles in its class from the JD Power Dependability Study. And it won an award from Kelley Blue Book for its extraordinary low 5-year cost of ownerships for 3 years in a row. And then just finally, plug-in hybrids tend to be less affected by range loss, and you have that gas as a backup, so it's less critical to think about battery health in this way. So just know that, like, if you buy a plug-in hybrid, this isn't as big of a deal. Now, all of what I just said is all well and good, but what if you don't want to think about all of that yourself and you just kind of want a tool that's there? Well, Recurrent Auto is a great website you can use. You just literally look at the VIN number of the car that you're looking at and plug it into their tool, and it will spit out all of this information for you. So it'll tell you how many miles are on the odometer, what you should generally expect the range to be. It also talks about like the battery warranty. So what's left of the battery warranty? So for this one, it's almost 5 years left of the battery warranty and 91,000 miles. And that those usually will transfer to the new owner as well, the warranties. Then it tells you what the initial range was versus what can be expected, what the range can be expected to be in 3 years. So I used Pawtucket, Rhode Island as an example. So this shows you in Pawtucket, like what you can expect the range to be in different weather conditions. So in cold, you can expect the range to go down to 183 miles. So it is normal for range to decrease in the cold, just for any car. And then in ideal temperatures, it shows you that that's like the best range you can get, that sort of thing. So definitely look at Recurrent Auto if you're interested in a used car and you want just kind of like a snapshot. They've done a lot of studies of used cars, so this is really informed data. And then let's talk a little bit about battery warranty. So electric car manufacturers are really confident that these cars will last these batteries will last the lifetime of the vehicle, which we just kind of talked about with the warranties in the last slide. So they've made sure that their battery warranties are pretty, like, they cover a lot of things. So most of them are 8-year, 100,000-mile warranties, with the exception of the Toyota Prius Prime in this example. It has a 10-year, 150,000-mile warranty. And like I said just previously, the warranty does tend to follow the car. It doesn't usually end. If you're buying it used, you can get it transferred to you. One thing that you will want to look at with these warranties, if there's a percentage guarantee. So if your battery life at the end of like this warranty should be sorry, let me rephrase that. If your battery life goes down to like 75%, then you can get coverage to get your battery replaced for the Nissan Leaf. Similarly, there's something like that for the Tesla Model 3 and the Toyota Prius Prime. So something to look at when you're looking at different warranties. Again, I don't think you'll need this. I don't think you'll have an issue, but just something to note. However, if you do have an issue with your battery for whatever reason, and there have been reasons, you will be covered. The most classic example that I can think of for this is the Bolt battery recall. So this happened for model years 2017 through 2019. Basically, there was a fire risk. It was very minimal. I don't think it was a very low risk of it happening, but basically because of this, they recalled the batteries and serviced just about all of them. And the cars that haven't gotten their batteries replaced have the software has updated to be able to diagnose whether or not they actually need to be replaced in some of these cars. So it's an issue that has been sorted out. But all of these people got their new batteries for free, which is actually really interesting and cool, because for the people affected, the battery technology from the time they got the car to the time they got their battery parts replaced improved so much that they actually got a slight increase in range when they had their battery parts replaced. So it does happen, but it's not something I would be overly concerned with. So I'm gonna just now go to tips for buying a pre-owned car and save questions to the end, just because I want to make sure we don't run out of time. So tips for buying a pre-owned car. So EVs are still a new technology, and the new market only make up about 8%. So which means the secondary market is rather small. That being said, there are new EVs coming out all the time, especially in the next couple years. So I do expect that the new market share will increase, and then you'll have eventually that will cycle down to the used market share. Typically leases are like 3 years, so I expect even in the next year or two, you'll see more cars available used. But this graph is really interesting in that it shows from 2011 to 2019 all the different types of used EVs that could be on the market. So in 2012, for example, we had the introduction of the Leaf and the Chevy Bolt with the V as in Victor, the plug-in hybrid. Since then, you can see there have been a lot more models that are on offer. Again, this is only until 2019, so there are more even still. But you'll see some decreases between the 2018 and 2019 year because some models have come off the market. So Chevy actually decided to take the Volt off the market. Though that's not reflected here, but that's just an example. So 2019 was the last year the Volt was in production. So there've just been some changes. But yeah, there's definitely plenty of models to choose from, and there'll be plenty of models with over 200 miles of range because in the last couple of years, that has been the norm. It's been like mid 200s, like 250, 260. And then in the coming years, especially with this model year and the next model years, the trend is about 300 miles of range per charge. So it is changing in the right direction, I think, because you'll have more cars with more range, which will give people more confidence when they buy their EVs. So now I just want to do like a little study of what I would look for when I'm buying an electric vehicle. So I'm using the Nissan Leaf as an example because it's a car that has been on the market for quite some time, and it is a car that is very popular in the used market. So I did like a little snapshot of the last 5-year models, 5 years worth of models. And here's what I'm thinking. So for 2018, there was no Nissan Leaf Plus, which has the 226 miles of range. There's just the regular Leaf, but the I think it's about 40 kilowatt battery. So the range was small, which is reflected also in the price because the price is the least of all of these model years. I mean, obviously it's the oldest one too, but when you go on to the 2019 through the 2022 models, they have an asterisk because I'm using the Leaf Plus as an example, which is reflected in the range. So that's at the 226 miles. When buying a car, I'm going to always go with the car that has the most initial range. So I'm going to go immediately nix the 2018 model year because I want more range. Then I'm going to think about things like, if batteries degrade a little bit over time, I probably want the newest used car that I can afford. So the 2021 looks like the best one because they're similar from 2019 to 2021. They're similar enough in price that I can say the 2021 is probably the best bet. The 2022 is out of there because it's too much money. It's over $31,000. That's not necessary. So we're going to go with a 2021. We're also going to go with a 2021 because we know with the federal tax credit, the car has to be at least 2 years old. So 2021 is 2 years old. So potentially if I have the tax liability, I could get the tax credit for this car. Then I'm a Rhode Islander, so I believe it's $750 for a used car. So I know I can get that off the price as well. So really, I'm looking at this car and I'm looking range and degradate and maybe potentially degradation. This is the best one. Price, also the best one. It also goes for all the incentives. So this is probably the best car for me. I would choose a 2021. It's not to say you can't choose a little bit older cars. This would just be my preference and the things that would go through my head when I'm considering different model years. Now just to expand this a little bit for other popular cars. So we just talked about the Leaf. So we're using the 2020 here as an example. So that 16,137 is the lowest price it could possibly cost on Kelley Blue Book, and the 20,494 is the highest price it could cost from numbers on Kelley Blue Book. So potentially, compared to a new car, you're saving about as much as like $16,000 or more. Now, when you look at the Hyundai Kona from 2019, that has a great range. That's 250 miles, all electric, anywhere from $20,000 to about $25,000 roughly. And you're saving at the least, you're saving about $8,000 compared to the new version. Moving on to the Chevy Bolt, we already talked about how it can be difficult for the Chevy Bolts to get a new one. So that's number one. But when you consider price, it could cost anywhere from $16,000 to about $21,000 compared to a brand new one, about $26,500. Now, all these brand new prices that I've listed here are the base MSRP. So it's not with any bells and whistles. It's not with any the comfort and convenience packages. It's nothing. It's just very, very base, and it's not including destination fees and things like that. So know that it probably will cost you a little bit more depending on what dealership you go to and things like that. Now, if we look at plug-in hybrids, so I've got some popular plug-in hybrids. We've got the Chevy Bolt, which is no longer in production, so I don't have a new one to compare it to, but it gets anywhere from 30 to 50 miles of electric range, and then it has a gas backup. The average price is about $7,600 on the low end to about $24,000 on the high end. The 2017 Prius Prime is another example. So 25 miles on electric range, and then it has a full gas backup. And that can be anywhere from about $19,000 to almost $23,000. The brand new Prius Prime, again, base level is $32,350. What is very different though for this car is the range for the brand new Priuses is about 40 miles of electric range. So it's very different. So that's not as much of an apples to apples comparison. And then for the 2012 through the 2015 Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid, which is the predecessor to the Prime, that's 11 miles of electric range and then a gas backup. And that can range from about $11,000 to just under $18,000. So, you can find a car that can be relatively inexpensive when you're on the pre-owned market. One final point of things to consider when buying any electric car these days is charging. And so I want to bring this up to you all. So Tesla has their own proprietary charging network and own proprietary port that they now are opening up to certain dealers. So they're having partnerships with certain dealers. The port is not going to be called a Tesla port anymore. It's going to be called the North American Charging Standard, or NACS for short. So I bring this up because multiple OEMs or manufacturers have come into agreement with Tesla, and that they are going to be allowed to use their charging stations. That is a huge game changer, as Tesla, that's like one of their big draws is their charging network. So Ford, Rivian, GM, Mercedes-Benz, Nissan, Pulsar, and Volvo have all so far announced, I'm sure there's more to come, their partnership with Tesla for their charging station. So what this means is that in 2024, all of these cars that fall under these manufacturers will have access to an adapter so they can start using Tesla's charging network. So that'll come sometime in the spring. Whether or not those manufacturers give you a free charging adapter depends on who you're with. So I know that Rivian is going to give their customers a free adapter. I don't know if everybody else is. In 2025, all new electric vehicles that fall under these manufacturers are going to come standard with the NACS charging port. So you won't have to have an adapter anymore if you have a 2025 or newer vehicle. Now, why do I bring this up if we're talking about used? I bring this up because of the adapter part. So if you have if you are looking at a car that falls under any of these manufacturers, having access to the Tesla charging infrastructure is amazing. It would be a real benefit for you. So just something to consider, you know, when making your purchase, new or used. And just to sum up, we know that car shopping can be frustrating. We just want you to remember there are things to make it easier, like the $4,000 tax credit, but remember it is based on your personal tax liability. Also state rebates. Rhode Island is one. Massachusetts coming soon. There will be some inventory problems. Inventory is not, not amazing, but it's better than it has been in a while. So definitely do some shopping and check it out. You might expect that you have to wait a little while. And then finally, we encourage you to use our electric car shopping tool. So for new vehicles, we have dealerships associated with the network. So you can actually go to their dealership and go through our website that way. For used vehicles, it's a little bit different. And I'll show you about that in just a second. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then reshare once I have that screen up. 1 second. Okay. So this is the used car shopping tool that I mentioned. You'll see that every car has its own card, but we also break it up by model years sometimes. And the reason we do that is because range can change based on certain model years. So you'll see right here with the Audi Q8 e-tron, the 2019 model year only had 204 miles of electric range, whereas the 21 and 22 model years has 222 miles of range. So that's a big difference. Another thing that we do here for this is we go through Kelley Blue Book and we try to find what the low price is for this range of vehicle and the high price of it. So you can figure out like basic things you want to know about the car. Like you can figure out like generally what kind of price are you looking at when you're going to be shopping for these cars. You can try to sort here on the left hand side too, figure out like what kind of range you're looking for. You can go and look at what kind of manufacturer you want to look for and things like that, and then style and battery type and just so many different things you can sort by. So this is kind of just to be a jumping off point for folks who are in the used car market, to give them some semblance of a starting point that says, okay, these are the things I want to know. Here's all this information in one easy place. Now I can go forth and be confident in that I want this type of car or these cars, and I'm going to go and actually go do the shopping. So I definitely encourage you to check out this tool if you're interested in a used car, and definitely give us some feedback. Let us know if you enjoyed it, if it helped, that sort of thing. I'm going to stop sharing that and reshare my screen again. Second. So, that's the presentation. I will stop again for questions in just a sec. I really hope you enjoyed it. This is my contact information. I will be sending a follow-up email, so you will have that contact information anyways. And if you enjoyed what we talked about today and the work that we do in general, we are a nonprofit, so please consider donating. We definitely appreciate anything you'd be willing to donate. And with that, I will go to questions. So Ezra, looks like we got some questions.
Yeah, there was one question that just came through right now about what price is used to determine if you're eligible for the tax break. Is it the car before tax or after? And are dealer charges included in that sale price?
So for the tax credit, I think it is based on final purchase price. And it's something that you'll just it's like a box you can tick off during tax time. So it will be based on final purchase price.
And then there were two other questions. Someone asked if it's safe to assume that hybrid EV engines also have those same 400 moving parts as a gas engine because of their gas engine components.
Yeah, I think they probably have maybe a different number. I don't think it's exactly 400, but essentially they're very similar because they do also have a gas engine. So, yeah, but if you drive more on electricity, that limited range, you shouldn't have to maintain it as much.
And we had a question if there would be EV ambassador in-person events in Rhode Island.
Oh, just you wait. Um, so we are currently working very hard on an event for National Drive Electric Week in Rhode Island. And I'm working to confirm the time and location right now, but most likely it will be on Aquidneck Island. So we're thinking Middletown or Newport. And National Drive Electric Week falls the last week of September and rolls into the first weekend in October. So it's, I think, the 23rd of September to the 1st of October. So I'm aiming for the last weekend. But I will keep you posted. Keep checking our events page, and you should see something in the next week or two. That's when I'm aiming to post it. One question is, do you know what are the most common reasons for an EV to go in the shop for repairs? If you get into a car accident, or one of our EV ambassadors, Peter, he just goes in for his tires to get rotated every so often. So anecdotally, we haven't heard many reasons for anybody to go in to get repairs or maintenance done besides topping up their fluids, which you can do at home. And unless there's an accident where their car needs to get worked on. All right, so we are right on time. I want to thank everybody for their excellent questions, and I hope you learned a lot here today. And I hope that this makes you confident in your used electric vehicle purchases in the future. We will be having, again, in-person events, so keep an eye on our events page. We also have a lot of events online too, like this. So again, keep an eye on the events page. Thanks again, and thanks to Ezra for answering everyone's questions in the chat and being a great assistant today. And have a fantastic day, everybody.